hello to everyone. Welcome to the Nevada Women's Film Festival's program number 9. And this is our live Q&A portion. My name is Samantha Rodriguez, and I am helping run the behind the scenes with my partner, Jemsen Bollozos. We're both co-founders of Eccentric Artists, and we're working as the festival's executive committee this year. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nikki, who is our moderator today. So Nikki Corda is an award-winning documentarian, and she is also Nevada Women's Film Festival's founder and executive director. So take it away, Nikki.
I am very excited to introduce Mary Zournazi, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Mary. And yeah. Mary is an alumnus of our festival. This is the second documentary that Mary has had with us in our festival. Dogs of Democracy was the first, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this piece, My Rembetika Blues, is just such a gorgeous. It's about music, it's about identity, life and love, and it's very resonant. It was very resonant for me. I really gravitate towards stories of identity and searching for one's roots. So Mary, tell us about the genesis of My Rembetika Blues. I know you actually do explain it a little bit in the beginning of the film, but let's hear it from you again.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great. It's really great to be here. Very, very happy. Love to be the alumni. I mean, you know, it's fabulous. Yeah, My Rembetika Blues. So it is a film primarily about a genre of Greek music that people don't really know about. But the story came from two different places. The first place really was, and I wasn't even aware of starting a film at this point, but I started watching a film called Rembetika by Kostas Ferris, who's a famous Greek filmmaker. And within the first few minutes of that film, I just had to turn it off because I got like goosebumps, and I was watching it, and the music, and it was set, the original scenes were in Turkey and the music was playing, and I just felt like I had lived that exact experience. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't watch this. And I realized it had something to do with my history of my grandmother who had come from Turkey. So there was, oh, there's a dog. Hello.
I'm sorry.
No, welcome.
It's better just to let him. It's better to let him just do his thing, and he'll be gone soon. I'm sorry.
No, it's very funny though, because I seem to attract, I seem to attract animals. This is partly why I made the film Dogs of Democracy, but even online, they seem to come to me as well.
Yeah. And he heard your voice. This is Theo.
Hello. So anyway, so it was this kind of moment which made me think, oh, this music's got some power. But then also when I was filming Dogs of Democracy in Greece, it was the time of the Syrian Civil War. The Syrian Civil War is, I think, an ongoing crisis, but it was at the height of all of the people fleeing Syria. And so there was like about 1.5 million people coming through. And I remember I had heard this story about Greeks and Syrians dancing to this music, Rembetika, together. And I just thought, wow, like how music can, you know, bring people together. Doesn't matter who you are, it dissolves kind of, you know, identities, national borders, all of those sorts of things. And I was just sort of thinking about the power of music, but then also this story, which was my grandmother's, which in a sense resonated also with the exodus of the Syrians, you know, in a different time.
Yeah, so your grandmother came, you said it was in 1921. She
22, yeah.
22, she came from Smyrna, Turkey, as part of, she fled to Greece.
Yeah, so there was a great exodus of people because of a Greek and Turkish war at that time, which in fact was one of the biggest, I suppose, let's say, exodus of refugees at that time after World War I. It was like a really big event in world history, but not many people know about it because it's a history, so it's one of those things. The film's also about sort of telling, I'm using my character to tell a personal story, but I'm using myself and the experiences and the events and the journey to also tell other people's stories, to sort of use my character in that way so people can identify whether it's their history or another history. It's about that journey to find about, your roots, the things that you don't know about, and the things that you discover. And in my sense, it's been the advantage, in a sense, of having music as a way of also telling that relationship. And one of the things for your audience and for audiences is often Rembetika music, which I think a lot of you would probably know, even though you wouldn't think you would know, but it has appeared in popular culture, for instance, in pulp fiction, that sound, that kind of, so the sound of it is and Zorba the Greek and all of that. But its roots often have that sense of the blues. It's often compared to the blues because it's about the American blues, because it's about telling of people's poverty and hardship and all of that. So it's a music that really comes from the soul of people, from people's real deep felt experience, I think. Yeah.
Well, that very first scene at the water, on the water, and the three gentlemen are playing. They're singing, and I love I love what this story is telling us. Why do you keep asking what village I'm from when you don't really love me anyway? It sounds so much better. It's Greek, the language, not
yes,
Turkish.
they're singing. They're singing in Greek, and that shot itself. Thank you for bringing that shot up, because it's really an important shot, because it's a Greek-Turkish band. So one member is Turkish, the other two are Greek, and you've got to think, the history of Greece and Turkey has been war all the time.
Yeah,
here they are playing in front of the Bosphorus Bridge, which is the link between the East and West. So it's this kind of moment of historical kind, so this bridge is connecting East and West in Istanbul. And I think for me, the start of the film, it's very important it starts in Turkey, because this is a whole thing about national identities. People always claim that their nation is the best or whatever, but when you boil it all down, we all come from different kind of places, and we create our stories, and in fact people get on. Usually it's just that there are these hard borders that are all these things that exist at a meta level. And I think the film is trying to kind of get to the more human level, what people's experiences are of these devastating impacts of war or whatever, but the joy as well. It's in no means a depressing film. It's actually an uplifting film, because it's about people finding, love in a sense. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, from that very first opening, I was hooked on the music. It was just, I really loved it. But let me ask you, you say in popular culture, it did seem a little bit familiar to me, but I couldn't bring to mind. And now, when did they use Rembetika, or when did Tarantino use that music in Pulp Fiction?
Yeah, look, I think the development of the sound came a lot earlier. It was already, the music had already sort of migrated in a sense to New York and Chicago in the 20s and 30s. So it was kind of around. And I think there are different musicians in America who are just picking it up, So you have the great sort of surf sound of that sort of music that has already taken up the beat, I guess. So it was way before Quentin Tarantino, I think. It kind of happened probably in the 50s and the 60s.
Oh, no, I'm sure. Way before Tarantino, but I mean, and where it would be a little bit more commonly recognizable with a film like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, that's right. A film like Pulp Fiction, Zorba the Greek, like most people of a particular age group would know that soundtrack, the Zorba the Greek soundtrack, or at least that sound, the you know. So I think people would know the sound, but wouldn't know its roots, that it actually came from this more organically, in a sense, rough music. Yeah.
It was a search for identity, and then you decided to embark upon this documentary. What was the what was the moment when you knew what you had to go explore and to document?
I think it really was a Syrian moment. It was the moment shooting in Greece and then realizing that I needed to tell a story about people's real life experience of being you know, forced out of the country, like forced migration, and realizing that in fact that was my story as well, but in a different way. I mean, obviously I'm a different generation, but wanting to tell a story about that these experiences of having to flee countries live with you forever. Like, I mean, not live with you, sorry, they're intergenerational. They carry, the stories carry on. It's not like it just goes away, and the trauma of it and the memories of it. So the film's also about the kind of memory that lives on, and how do we make sense of it? How can we shape it? How can we, you know, make things sort of better in a way? And it was that as well. It was a search of kind of identity. It was a search of acknowledging our memory, that we carry these memories. Like, it's almost sort of epigenetic in a sense. It, you know, it's almost like biologically felt, but it's culture we're transmitting, you know.
Yes, and I, you know, but that's why it resonated with you almost. That scene from the Costas Ferris film, it felt almost biological to you. You say? Yeah,
it felt like, I mean, it really felt like my cells had gone through this already, and I know that kind of sounds weird at some level, but I don't think it is. I think we, you know, we all carry these histories somehow, and
I think there might be some new research coming out that says that that's actually true, because I think we used to believe that DNA, you know, any changes to our experiences happen over thousands of years, and, you know, but I think there's new research saying that, you know, African Americans carry the trauma of slavery on a biological level, for example.
Yeah, no, I think, no, there definitely is in that kind of field of epigenetics. And I think what I'm thinking, and what I'm wanting to convey, is that cultural element of it, that trauma, that storytelling carries as well. And it's like, how to make sense of it. And I think we all can make sense of it in our own ways. And I think, the film's a journey of that, you know, and finding all of these wonderful characters on who are sharing similar stories.
Yeah, tell me about
ways, you know. Yeah. So
tell us about the characters you met along the way that we see in your film.
Yeah, look, I have this one character. Those, all of them I love, you know, because they're all fantastic characters. But one in particular is Jim's Clavunos, who's the one of the Bad Seeds, Nick Cave in the Bad Seeds, and he's you know, percussionist, and he's a Greek American, and in a way his journey is sort of similar, you know, trying to find out his own roots, having a love of Rembetika, and then by a fortuitous organization, we did a jam with him and one of the sons of the most famous Rembetika player in Greece, Stelios Vambakaris. So it was this wonderful moment of having a, you know, a musician, a kind of rock musician in a way, jamming with this master of this sound, and then you know, that experience of them coming together was just really lovely. And also traveling with Jim to find his grandmother and his parents, you know, in the island of Idra, and not finding anything either. So my story is sort of almost this, you know, investigative story to find my roots, but in the end I don't find anything. But what I do find is this kind of experience of recognition of what, you know, my forebears went through, and gives me a new appreciation, and I think Jim's story is part of that too, the appreciation of this kind of history.
Yeah.
He's one of the many wonderful people.
Now you share with us, you were born in Greece, yes, and you moved to, you were born in Australia.
Yeah. I was born in Australia. Yep.
Okay, so your mother, your parents had at that point already moved to Australia.
Yes. So I was brought up here, but my parents were in Egypt. So my grandmother's root was from Smyrna, Greece, Egypt, Australia. So it was this kind of, crazy route. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been an Australian your whole life. You were born, so you're an Australian, through and through.
But that's actually a really interesting point, because I never felt Australian. Like I always felt that I was, having this background, being Greek. I always felt, and I grew up at a time in Australia, which, in the 70s, which was very, very, very racist, and we were foreigners and all of this. But what this film did was actually, in a sense, calm down that anxiety. In a way, I realized, having done all this travel, meeting all these people, finding out about my own history, how Australian I actually am. And that was a sort of a coming home. It was like the film in a way has that, it's sort of got that Homeric Odyssey, like we're all in search of our identity or something, and then you come home and you realize it's always there. And actually, it was true. That's what happened. I just went off on this journey and found out actually I'm incredibly Australian.
So how is the film doing? It's been on the festival circuit.
Yeah, it started the festival circuit in April, so I only just finished it actually. So it was a COVID film, really. That was edited during COVID. So it's been at a few of the Greek film festivals. It's at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. It was nominated for Best Documentary at the Los Angeles Greek Film Festival, so that's really been really good. It won at the World Fest Houston International Festival. It won a Gold Remy Award for documentary, so that's been good. So it's just starting its life. In the circuit, and of course, with festivals, there's always a balance of being accepted and other ones you get rejected from. So it's just the nature of festival life.
Yeah. Did you say Los Angeles Greek Film Festival?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there was. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool. So I know that you teach.
Yeah.
When did you start making films, and how did you start making films?
Yeah.
I know that's a big question, isn't it?
Well, it's an interesting one. I think, there was a moment when I remember, and it's a strange story, but I remember being like, we had this wonderful theatre in Sydney called the State Theatre, which is one of those really Art Deco theatres that was built in the 1920s. Beautiful. And I remember being 7 years old with my sisters watching some film, I can't remember. And one of my sisters turned to me and said, how do you spell philosophy? I don't know why they asked me this, but I spelt it. And then I was in this theatre and I realized, like, I'm actually a philosopher by training. So I think it was a very early, deep-seated thing about philosophy and film. I was already at 7, but actually I never did anything for a long time. I did a lot of what would be the equivalent to NPR, and I did a lot of radio documentaries. So I worked with our audio arts in our public broadcasters. So for many years, I did a lot of, documentary in that fashion. So I knew the structure of documentary. And I think I've always, as I said, from this root of very young, but always secretly, I think wanted to make my own films. But I started working with the German filmmaker Wim Wenders in 2003. Yeah,
Wow.
we've written a book together called Inventing Peace, and I think, and then like being involved with him and going to his sets and watching him and those kinds of things, reading his scripts and stuff like that. I think there was always that learning, and I did a lot of research for the book whilst we were writing it. So I watched a lot of films. I knew by the end of the book, I thought, you know, the research and stuff, I can probably make my own film now. So that was the sort of genesis. But the real genesis came, or the real starting point to make my own film was I have always loved Agnes Varda. Like, I just love her work. To me, she's one of the best documentarians, film essayists ever. And I wanted to make a documentary about her. So I met her in Paris in 2014. And, you know, I met her and I said, I would like to make a documentary. And she just, it wasn't her thing, you know, she likes to do her own storytelling. So she said, look, you know, maybe at some point you could film me doing something, but, you know, I don't really want to have my own documentary made by somebody else. So then from Paris, I actually then went to Greece. And that's when I found the stray dogs. And I thought, well, if I can't make a film essay about Agnes Varda, I'll make a film essay about the stray dogs. And that's how it really, yeah. I started from this kind of like, you know, rejection almost. Yeah.
Well, so whatever happened with Agnes Varda? Did you ever get to film?
No, I didn't. And I kept in contact with her over the years, and but we never did anything. I mean, that's still one of my secret little, you know, things that I'd love to be able to tell a story about her influence on my life, you know, and in honor of her. And of course, she passed away, you know. So there's no longer that opportunity to have her live, but there's so much footage, you know. Yeah, anyway, that's something that one day I would love to be able to do.
And, you know, well, one of the questions I was going to ask you are what type of films are you planning to make in the future? So that segues perfectly. But absolutely a history documentary about her, but with your personal experience with it. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a fantasy, really. But I do have two. I have one that I'd like to start in what will be our spring, your autumn.
Okay.
But it would require travel again, and until I can, you know, leave Australia because our borders are shut, it might take a little while to do that. So, but that will be a documentary back in Greece, but telling a kind of story, I think, about our experiences as we're living them in now. But the other one is a fiction. Yeah, I want to do a doco fiction type with a writer. Okay.
So will that also be in Greece?
No, that will be Australian. It will be Australian. It will be Australian road movie. Yeah.
Okay, so but for the most part, you've been called to Greece to make your documentaries.
Yeah, I have, and it's been. But I think the stories, I think, like they're rooted in a location, like, but they're not rooted to that location, if you know what I mean. That the stories are more universal than that, but it's using somehow that call has allowed me to tell more universal tales. And I think Dogs of Democracy, although it's specifically about the stray dogs of Athens, I think the stories resonate, you know, obviously beyond that, you know. So yeah,
it was wonderful. Yeah. So for those who do not know, this was our film about 3 years ago, which won Spirit of Activism, Dogs of Democracy. Will you tell our audience a little bit about that film?
Yeah, it was telling us a story about the stray dogs that I met in Athens, but it was it was about the dogs and about the people who took care of them. So that was the initial starting point, but it was also telling a story about the Greek financial crisis that was in the backdrop. And so, you know, the kind of poverty that emerged from that, the politics that kind of emerged from that. And there was a hero dog called Lukanikos who used to go to all of the anti-austerity rallies and turn up. And so it was also about his life in relationship to the Greek crisis as well. And again, it was this experience of meeting so many wonderful people and characters. And one of the things I should also say is I've been very blessed to be working with a fabulous composer, Konstantinos Vita. So both films have had really wonderful scores that I've been able, and it's just been such a gift because music is, I mean, this film at the moment, My Rembetika Blues, is obviously about music, but music is such an important element in filmmaking. You know, it really carries a film, it carries an audience. So it's been just really wonderful to be able to work with him and on both films.
Well, he's added so much. We thank him for that. You're absolutely right. It really brings a film to another level. It can add so, I mean, even look at
I'm just thinking of
Paris. My gosh, his name is on the top of, I talk about him all the time, but he uses Philip Glass and anyway, his film, it's on the top of my tongue.
Yeah,
I'm gonna kick myself.
But I'm also thinking of Wim Wenders and Raikuda and Paris, Texas. You know, like that. You know, like Paris, Texas. That soundtrack is just, you know, magnificent. And I think Wim also works very well with music too. You know, and I think most films that really touch something or get that emotional feel really have a really powerful score, like have a, you know, so music becomes that other character in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to kick myself later.
It will come in the next question.
Yeah. But you know, getting back to your Dogs of Democracy and being called to Greece and exploring your heritage and so on, and being a philosopher by training, and you knew how to spell philosophy when you were 7 years old. Now, is there a relationship between your interest in filming in Greece and the fact that there's been, you know, the cradle of philosophy, right? Philosophy came from Greece, Socrates and Plato, and the history of all of that?
Yeah, I think it was maybe more accidental in that sense but what I found though is that I don't know, I mean, I've just learned so much from being there, from doing the shooting there, because I mean, for those of you that see the film, both films, I mean, I shoot them both, so I've got a small camera, and I'm you know, so, you know, most of the time it translates quite well, but it's sort of, it's that, I suppose, in a way, to answer your question slightly differently, I think what I love about filmmaking and what I love about doing it, you know, more intimately, like, you know, having the camera, meeting people, being one-on-one rather than a huge crew, although you need a huge crew sometimes for shots, is that kind of dialogue or experience that you can have with somebody that is really more organic, you know, that comes from that kind of, I suppose, that tradition of conversation and you know, things developing out of that. So I suppose it has that angle, you know, it has that sort of sense of my drive. I just love stories, you know. I love people in a way, and I love filming. Like I just love that real sense of being able to shoot you know, scenes and not just people, like landscapes. And I think I learned that a lot from Wim Wenders, that the beauty of images, and so you know, whilst a lot of, you know, you can have a huge crew, and you need a huge crew definitely for different types of filmmaking,
different things, yes,
different things, but there's a real intimacy, I think, that you can't. And there's one scene in my Rembetika Blues, which I won't give away the full story, but it's towards the end of the film, and there's a woman singer and a guy who are basically reminiscing around the loss of a musician. I don't want to get into it.
I remember. Yeah.
But I went, definitely, I thought I just got to go there by myself in the first instance to shoot them playing, because I knew it would be emotional. And I think, you know, later on I invited a cinematographer to shoot me as well in that shot, but first up it was just them. because I knew if there was somebody else there, the real feeling wouldn't have come out, you know, that what they were actually feeling would have been stilted by the crew.
Okay, so now as a practical question, you knew that, you know, for the sake of the emotion of what was happening, you needed to just be as unobtrusive as possible and be on your own. Do you also capture your own sound?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really impressive.
So I carry usually a Zoom recorder. Like, it's a pretty primitive type sound, but it's stereo, and so that when we go into the editing room, we can match it up, and so that you have the full stereo experience whilst I'm shooting, you know, with the camera mic as well. Yeah.
And you do all of that. What about lighting?
Yeah, I'm a natural light person, so I try as much as possible to do it where there's enough light in a room. Sometimes I will use, but I'll often use what's around as opposed to setting stuff up, because I mean, a lot of these two films are, I mean, they're really more organic. It's kind of like you're on the road.
It's more natural, yeah,
and you have to just kind of make do, and sometimes there's clumsiness to it. I mean, that's just a fact, but what I've learned, which is, you know, you can do a lot in post-production. You can do a lot with and you can make things work in ways, and so I try as much as possible to do as best as I can as I'm shooting, but I always recognize that there's a place in the editing room where we might be able to fix stuff up if we have to.
And thank goodness for that. But you know, look at the classics, the cinema verite classics, and it was all natural light. The Maisels were using natural light, and they did do sound recording, because bad sound is not, you know, it's very hard to live with. But I think with documentary, we do get a little bit more latitude with lighting, and that we're free to use more natural light.
I mean,
I appreciate you telling me that, because that inspires me a little bit to not be so hung up on all these technical.
Look, I think one of the things I remember reading, and I love, I mean, look, I'm a lover of also reading other classic filmmakers' biographies and things like that. And I remember reading Federico Fellini, because I love his work, you know.
Yeah.
And he had a line in his one which was something like, never let technicians tell you can't do something. So in other words, you know, you have to, and then there's always a solution. There's always a solution. And so I like that kind of spirit of that. You just kind of go with it. Okay, it might not always work, but there's always a way to find it, to make it work somehow. And I think it's just that risk taking. And I don't know. I mean, I love that you can make a film quite simply, although of course it's fabulous to have a budget, and you know, I mean, you know, I'd love to have a huge budget to make film, but I think the realism of documentary is, it's very hard. I mean, you know, but stories need to be continually told, and
yes,
I think that's the urgency of the world in which we live in a sense, that we really have to tell good stories, because otherwise we just get bombarded by crap. And absolutely important stuff, and that's why it's so thrilling to have this festival, really, that you know, we can share as female filmmakers as well, in particular, that we can share these stories regardless of gender in that sense too.
Absolutely, and truth, and to get these truths out there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's why, I mean, I just love to, I think for whatever age, you know, young people, whatever, you can tell these stories. There should be no limit actually on you know, your ability to do it.
Absolutely. So we're going to be winding up in just a few minutes here, or just a couple of minutes here. But I would like if you could share with us, I just learned before we went live, speaking to Mary, that Australia is on lockdown again.
Yes. Well, Sydney is,
Sydney, okay.
Yeah. So we just last night. So the last week we've had a spike in the the transmission, and so we're in lockdown again. And I have to say, I mean, it's two things. One thing, last year when we went in, I think the whole world went into lockdown.
Yes.
It was kind of okay for me because I didn't feel the isolation or anything, because I was editing my Rembetika Blues, so I was controlling this world, and I felt every day I was going to these different countries, you know, through the film, so it didn't matter. But this time I'm feeling I'm really feeling the you know, the loneliness of it, and the isolation of it, and I think, you know, I think it's hard for people. It's really hard for people. Yeah, that's just, but anyway, the good thing is, I think that this is the importance, I guess, of just having films, sharing films, being able to tell stories, and know that that's what we can do. You know, we can come out of this and we can reflect back, and we can, you know, tell truthful experiences, I hope. And that's what my next film will be partly about. Yeah.
And your next film, the fiction film?
No, the
documentary. Okay.
Well, the fiction will have some elements, obviously, but
okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you do transition to this fiction and this, will you be a little bit more traditional in terms of using lighting and having a set?
Yeah, I think we will have to. Yeah, I think, but I still want. You know, I've been also inspired. So, like my friend and I, who's an Australian writer, Christos Chalkas, I'm still interested in that kind of documentary style of telling, but doing it through fiction. And I guess there are, you know, various filmmakers that have done that successfully in the past. I think Agnes Varda won.
Yes.
Just recently, Nomadland. I think, you know, that's a really interesting, you know, interesting genre type. So I think but I think Agnes Varda did it very, very, very beautifully with Cleo from 5 to 7, which is, you know, one of her first.
Yeah.
Where it was a fiction, but she shot also live, you know, and so it's something about that hybridness that I really want to explore. So there will be aspects of set, yes, but I think there'll be also like real just on the road type shooting.
So you've had really wonderful role models and mentors between Wim Wenders and Agnes Varda. And
I know. I feel so blessed in a way. I mean, Wim has been such a gift in my life, you know. And yes, I mean, he's, you know, to sort of, in a sense, not that he's, you know, not that he's mentored my filmmaking in that direct sense, but he's been such an inspiration.
Inspiration and influence, and and you've, you know, it's good of you to be there to you know, to be the student in a sense. Wonderful masters.
Yeah. And then you go off and you do your own thing, and then you become your own person in that sense. And it's but no, like that, you know, like so much of my work is so influenced and inspired. I mean, I do my own thing, but I think had I not spent years watching, learning, listening, I think, you know, I probably wouldn't be making the films that I'm making now, and I feel proud of them. You know,
you know, it is for, you know, I think you still would, but it's been a very important, you know, support for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, it really has paid off, and your films are beautiful. And they're so layered, and you know, there's the story, the literal story, and then there's the greater story, you know, with both of your documentaries that we've been lucky enough to screen in our festival. I really appreciate your work, and I look forward to more films.
Thank you for screening them. It's just great, you know.
You're very welcome. And it was Errol Morris.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just, you know, I had one.
I told you it would come up.
Yeah. So he is much like, and he's one of my all-time favorite documentary filmmakers. But without his composer Philip Glass just adds so much. So.
Yeah, thin blue line. I mean, the Philip Glass music at all of those different moments. It's, you know, the cutting. You know, it really takes the story along. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it kind of gives the right music, especially something so elegant, and you know, like Philip Glass and your composer, you know, it almost uplifts the gravitas of the whole experience, you know.
Oh yeah. And I it's so important to me, like so important. Music is really part of, like, I can't imagine making a film without thinking about that relationship, you know, because otherwise it's just flat.
And you know what, I'm really, this really inspired me, Mary. And I agree. I think it's incredibly important, and it is more important than lighting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm getting the notice that we have to wind up, but it was such a pleasure. It was such a pleasure to talk to you, and good luck in Sydney. I hope that things, you know, it doesn't last too long, the situation, and we'll be thinking of you.
Thank you kindly.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
See you later.